Sorry about that, guys. I was trying to demonstrate something. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Trying to see if you can see through the holes. Anyway, these holes that are in the top, you should be able to look right through them and see light. I don't know. Earlier I did it. I kind of held it up and I could show it, but it's not showing up good. So what I usually do, which is weird, I blow on it and make sure that you can blow through it. And with my naked eye, even though you can't see with the camera, I can see right through the hole. So I can see around. As long as you can see through it, it's not clogged up, that's what you want. So, get the oil out of my mouth. Put this intake one back, exhaust, and grab all four of my intakes. Get them. So, all four of my intake valves. That's my dog barking at my nephew. Hey, Sam. Get him, boy. Get him.
I start petting him. He walk closer to me.
Yeah, he is. He's getting real big. He's getting wide.
Yeah.
All right, so intake valves. Let me go somewhere. Let me figure this out. No, see, that's exhaust. Right there is where the exhaust goes. We do not want that. Okay. We want the intake, which is right there. So that's one. Two. Three. And the fourth one. Go in right back there. So you want to make sure these are seated down in the lifter. You feel for it. Make sure it's in there good. All right. So you see the rods, 1, 2, 3, 4 rods in there. And that's all on the intake side. So now I'm going to get the rocker arm and we'll get started with that. All right. So I have my 5 bolts here. As you can see, I soaked them in oil. You don't want to put those down in anything dry. So soaking them in oil is one of the best ways to do, so you're not putting any chemicals or, any sealant, Loctite or anything like that down in your engine. So I just soak them in oil. I took off this front timing chain belt because I'm going to need to. Well, I don't need to, but I like to see, because I'm going to end up having to turn this crank and get this crank bolt. Put this crank bolt back down in here. Yes, I should have brought my wrench. All right, tighten that down, because I'm going to end up tightening this, because if you see each of these rods, they're going to be up here at different distances. So one's going to be high. One rod will be high, one rod will be lower, the other one will be lower, and the other one will be high. So when you put the arm on here, it's going to touch some of them and the other ones it won't be touching. So you can't tighten it down like that because you're not going to have everything in the right position. So let me look over this side just to make sure I'm in the right locations. So that one is there. So yeah, so they're right beside on the right side of each of these little pillars. So there's a pillar and there's a rod. There's a pillar and there's a rod. There's a little pillar and there's a rod. So over here, the same thing. It's a little pillar and there's a rod. And there's a little pillar and then there's a rod. So these rods go down into the lifters. The lifters are here. So you have to make sure it's seated in the lifter correctly, and also that it seats in this rocker arm correctly. If not, when I started this one over here, I put it on, then I started to crank it, and this number 2 rod right here flew out because it wasn't seated properly. Luckily, it didn't break. I was able to reuse it and go for it. So I'm going to take this rocker arm and, well, first, see this arm has a, if I'm able to show you. You have a little eye on it. It means intake. See that little eye there? There we go. The little eye right there on the arm. That stands for intake. So you'll know the intake from the exhaust. The intake goes on the top, exhaust on the bottom. So you'll know where to put it. You can't mix it up. You can, but you shouldn't. So let me go ahead and put these arms on here and go from there. Alrighty, I've reached my first dilemma. Alright, as you see, I've sat the rocker arm on here just gently, no bolts in it. But if you can look here, the rods are not lining up with the rocker arm. This rod is supposed to go into the back of this arm right here. And that's not what happened. It's all the way over here, which is incorrect. Same with this one. Going here is not lining up with this. So something's not right. Most likely, these rods should be on the other side. You can see down here, there's a hole here and there's one here. I have it on this side. So I'm gonna take this off. Pull this out and see if that's what it is. Just doesn't seem, it's fitting good. It actually fits better. There we go. I think that's exactly what it was. It's just differences, because if that's it, this one is way back here when it starts. This one is all the way in the front when it starts. So opposite sides is opposite ways, I guess. Because I'm pretty sure now I get this rod. Let me get this cord out the way over here. Alright, get this rod, set it up here. Gotta get all these lifters lifted up over top of the springs That one. That's more like it. So now, you can see the rod comes here, and I just have to line this up here. So that's how it goes. Now, take my bolts, put them in here lightly. This one back here. This one. Well, there's another problem that I'm doing wrong. I didn't catch on to it. I have the arm upside down. So the actual little squares that are on the bottom actually go on the top. So the arm is correct, but right here, these little squares go on the top and the round piece goes on the bottom. I'm gonna try to turn it without moving that too much. Here we go. And that sits so much better. But see, now it's not sitting flush, if you can see it, because it's resting on hitting some of the rocker arms that are high. So what I did here is I'm going to get my torque wrench or breaker bar. I'm going to turn the camshaft. Once I do that, it's going to make the lifters go up and down. So I'll start in the back, make the lifter go down enough to where I can seat it on the rocker arm. Then I'll tighten the bolt in the back. Then I'll do the same for the next one, the next one, next one. And then I should have everything lined up. So I'll come back to that in a minute. I know the camera work is not the best, guys. This is my first time doing this and trying to hold this, and I see some guys doing this all the time, and I'm like, I'm more amazed at the camera work of them holding the camera and going under doing everything with one hand than I am of the actual work that they're doing. So I'm gonna do my best, and hopefully everybody can see what's happening. Alrighty. I know it's hard to see here, but the two in the back I have, what I did was turn the crank here. So as I turn the crank, piston in the back, piston 7 will go either down or up. What I want to do is go down to a certain point to where I can slide this arm over it. Then I push it down, and then I tighten down this bolt. Then I come over here, maneuver this rod the same way underneath this arm, and do the same thing. Then I crank it again, and when I crank it, this one that went down will go up, and this one will go down. Once this goes down, I position underneath, tighten this bolt down, and I crank it again until this one comes up. It makes it tight. And when this one comes up, this one goes back down, but the bolt is tight, which keeps it in. And the second bolt is tight, not all the way, but just enough to keep it from coming out. Now I'm gonna do the last two the same way. So this one is not in, and this one is not in. See, it's moving. So I'm gonna do those same two the same way. I can't do it and hold the camera at the same time. It's impossible. So, but this one is way up now. I have to get that to go down. So what I'm gonna do, I can show you, like I said, I'm gonna crank. And I'm gonna check it out with my hand. It's moving now, so now I can get it underneath there. Once I get that, you see underneath here, I will tighten this bolt down and then move over and do the same thing. Crank it again until this rod goes down. Put this over top and then tighten it. And then I should have all of them. All right, let's see. All right. I have all of the rods in. Sun is going down so fast. It's like 4 o'clock and it's a little after 4, so you see I have all the rods in seated. Now I want to make sure they're seating on the back of this really well, so I'm going to go underneath the car because I have the tires off and look at a different angle and see. And I can see right now I have, you look in the back, let me zoom in for everyone. It's hard to see, but that rocker arm there is seated well. But this one, look at this second rocker arm. You see that? You see how that's not seated inside of that arm? If I turn that crank, it's gonna fly. It's hard to see this middle one, but it's also not seated. And then the one right here, you can see that in there, it's not seated. And that would be, see if I can, right up there, you'll see it's not properly seated. So I only have the one in the back that's seated, and the front three are not seated correctly. So I'm gonna have to loosen these back up and reseat them again. But that's how hard it is. You gotta keep doing it till you get it. Or else, like I said, you put the valve cover and everything back on like that and run, that piston's gonna shoot right up through your valve cover or down through the engine. It's gonna be bad. And at the most, it'll just come out or it will bend. Either way, all the hard work goes to waste. So I'm gonna do that again and we'll come back again. All right, guys, it's getting dark out here, but I think I got it. Over here goofing off with my nephew. But let's go into here where you can see it pretty good. All right, let's see if I can zoom in here. All right, you can see number one seated pretty good. Number two, right there, is also seated. Number three is the hardest one to see. But right the bottom and left of that wrench. Right there. And that looks seated. And then this one here. Which also looks seated, but it's pushing down, so it's hard to tell. So let's go over here. Crank this chumpy over and see what we have. And as you can see, this one is moving right now. It's coming back up. Actually, let me go back down here now and see if I can get a better look. Yep, that's good. You guys might not be able to see it good, but I can. So actually, when it goes down, that's when I need to go look at it. So when this goes down, the back part should go up, and that's when I'm gonna go back there and see, make sure it's seated. But the fact that it's turning pretty good gives me pretty confidence that it is, because there we go. Oh man, that was fast. Okay, that one just went down. So I'm gonna go check it out. You don't have to tighten it some more, because as it goes down, it comes back up pretty fast. Yep. Alrighty. Now I'm gonna go tighten these babies down. Like I said, I'll look it up again. I think it's 18 foot-pounds of torque. Something like that. But that's how those go. I'll do the bottom one tomorrow, because I don't like to work in the dark when I get off work. And I'll probably take the time now to clean off this intake manifold underneath, just to have it ready, since I have the solenoids already. All right, I'm gonna tighten these down, and that's good for the day. Do the same on the exhaust manifold. Same thing I did on the intake. Actually, the exhaust is easier. Once you put those in, you can usually put the rod over it and just tighten that down. You don't have to keep cranking the crank the same way to do it, and get those on. So the intake is the harder one, and that's basically how I did it. Alrighty, till next time.